How well do you think you actually know your favorite celebrities? Because Dave Carraro is about to prove that the answer is probably not as well as you think. For 13 seasons, millions of viewers watched this fisherman compete on National Geographic's Wicked Tuna. He won 5 championships. He dominated the boats. He became the show's biggest rival and its greatest champion. And then one day, he was just gone. No explanation. No farewell. No final interview. Just silence. And for years, people wondered what happened. What scandal took him down? What forced him to disappear? Was it an accident? A legal problem? A breakdown? The internet was full of theories. Some people said he was forced off. Others claimed he had a complete mental health crisis. A few even whispered about darker possibilities. But here is the truth that nobody expected: Dave Carraro never actually had a dramatic downfall at all. In fact, what happened to Dave Carraro is way more interesting than any scandal, because it reveals something deeply unsettling about how television works and how we mistake watching someone for actually knowing them. And today, we are going to uncover the real story behind the man who disappeared. Before Dave Carraro ever appeared on a single episode of Wicked Tuna, he was already a legend in his own right. This is important because most people think the show made him. They assume he was nobody, and then National Geographic turned him into a star. But that is the exact opposite of what happened. Dave Carraro was born and raised in Gloucester, Massachusetts, the historic heart of American commercial fishing. This was not some tourist town where people played at being fishermen. This was the real thing. For centuries, Gloucester has been where serious fishermen work. And Dave grew up in that world. He did not just watch fishing happen. He lived it. He breathed it. He became obsessed with becoming the best. But here is what makes Dave different from every other fisherman who grew up in Gloucester. He had a second passion. He also became an accomplished aviation captain. That means he had a pilot's license, serious flying experience, and the kind of disciplined, methodical mindset that airline pilots need to have. That detail might seem small, but it is absolutely crucial to understanding who Dave Carraro is, because the man who stepped onto Wicked Tuna was not just a fisherman. He was someone with a military level of precision, a background in aviation safety protocols, and a documented ability to manage extreme risk while staying calm under pressure. As a commercial fisherman, Dave built his reputation on one simple thing: results. He ran his own charter fishing business aboard a boat called the FV Tuna.com, and that boat became famous for bringing in massive bluefin tuna catches. He was not the flashiest fisherman in Gloucester. He was not the loudest. But he was the most reliable and the most successful. Other captains took wild risks and sometimes paid for it. Dave did not. He approached every single fishing expedition the way an airline pilot approaches a flight. He checked the weather obsessively. He studied the water conditions. He managed his crew with precision. He calculated risk and reward before making any major decision. And because of that discipline, his catch records were remarkable. By the time the cameras from National Geographic showed up, Dave Carraro was already wealthy, already respected, and already known throughout the commercial fishing community as one of the best captains in New England. He did not need television to make him successful. Television arrived to film someone who was already at the top of his world. But here is where things get complicated. When National Geographic came to Gloucester to film Wicked Tuna, they did not just want to show real fishing. They wanted drama. They wanted rivalry. They wanted tension and conflict and personalities that would make people watch. And that is when the real Dave Carraro and the television Dave Carraro started to become two different people. On camera, Dave played a role. He was the arrogant rival. He was the calculated competitor who did not care about friendship when there was money and glory on the line. He was ruthless. He was strategic. He was almost villainous in the way he approached the competition. His on-screen persona was someone who would do whatever it took to win, and the other captains knew it. The Wicked Tuna audience watched Dave Carraro and saw a man consumed by competitive drive, someone who had turned fishing into a cold, calculated business where personal relationships meant nothing compared to bringing in the biggest catch and claiming the championship title. Except that was not actually true. That was television. That was a story that worked for the show. Because away from the cameras, Dave maintained genuine friendships with the very people he was competing against on screen. He had a real connection with his former first mate Paul Hebert. He actually respected the other captains. He understood that the rivalry they portrayed on television was entertainment. But the audience did not know that. The audience watched 13 seasons of Dave Carraro playing the role of the show's most dominant and most aggressive competitor, and they believed that was who he really was. They believed that Dave was cold and calculating and willing to step on anyone to get ahead. That made him fascinating to watch, but it also made him the villain of the story. And as we are about to discover, that television illusion was going to become incredibly important to understanding what happened next. When National Geographic launched Wicked Tuna in 2012, nobody could have predicted what it would become. The show was supposed to be a simple documentary series about commercial fishermen competing for bluefin tuna in the Atlantic Ocean. It was meant to be educational. It was meant to showcase a dying industry. But what the network discovered was that audiences did not just want to learn about fishing. They wanted drama. They wanted personalities. They wanted to watch grown men battle each other for money and glory, and they wanted those men to be larger than life. So National Geographic gave them exactly that. And Dave Carraro became the star they did not know they were looking for. During his first season on Wicked Tuna, Dave did something remarkable. He won. And not just won. He absolutely dominated. His boat was faster. His crew was better trained. His catches were bigger. His strategy was smarter. And his competitors knew it. Over 13 seasons, Dave Carraro won 5 championship titles. That is not a coincidence. That is not luck. That is a man who knew how to fish better than almost everyone else on the water, combined with someone who understood how to handle the pressure of being on television and still perform at an elite level. The cameras loved him. The audience loved to hate him. And the network loved the ratings he brought in. By season 3, Dave Carraro was the face of Wicked Tuna. He was the man everyone wanted to watch, whether they were rooting for him or against him. But success on television comes with a price. As the seasons went on, the gap between the real Dave and the television Dave grew wider and wider. On camera, he was increasingly portrayed as the arrogant rival. The man who won because he did not care about anyone else. The captain who would sacrifice friendships for trophies. The guy who saw every other boat as an enemy. And the more dramatic they made him on television, the more successful the show became. So National Geographic leaned into that narrative harder and harder. They edited scenes to make him look colder. They highlighted his competitive moments and downplayed his generous ones. They made him into the villain because villains are what keep audiences watching. And Dave Carraro, being a professional performer and a smart man, understood what was happening. He played the role because that is what the job required. But off camera, the real Dave was building and maintaining genuine relationships with the people he worked with. This is where things get really interesting, because for 13 years, Dave Carraro was essentially living 2 lives. On Monday through Friday, he was the real Dave. He was the experienced fisherman. The skilled pilot. The man with genuine friendships and a private personal life. He was married to a woman named Jess Boardway, and they kept that relationship almost completely out of the public eye. They did not do interviews about their marriage. They did not share details about their personal life. They did not try to leverage his television fame into social media stardom. They just lived quietly. But then on the weekends, during filming, Dave became the television Dave. The competitive rival. The cold strategic captain who would do anything to win. It was exhausting. It was disorienting. And it was the exact thing that makes television so powerful and so dangerous at the same time. While all of this was happening, something darker was happening in the background of Wicked Tuna. Something that the show's producers tried to downplay but that the cast knew was very real. The fishing industry is dangerous. Extremely dangerous. It is one of the most deadly professions in America. People die doing this job. They get injured. They get sick. They disappear. And during the run of Wicked Tuna, the show lost cast members in ways that were tragic and unexpected. One of them was Duffy Fudge, a beloved member of the Wicked Tuna family. Duffy was not a main captain, but he was part of the crew, part of the community, someone people knew and respected. And then he was gone. The circumstances were heartbreaking and difficult, and it reminded everyone involved in the show that this was not just entertainment. This was real life. Real danger. Real consequences. Another cast member, Captain Charlie Griffin, also passed away. These were not people the audience did not know. These were faces that had appeared on the show. These were men that the other captains had worked with and competed against. And their deaths hung over the entire production like a shadow. For Dave Carraro, these losses hit different. He understood better than most that the show was a thin veneer over a dangerous reality. He had spent his entire career as a commercial fisherman knowing that any given day could be his last. He had trained as a pilot where one mistake could kill everyone aboard. He lived in a world where risk management was not abstract. It was the difference between going home to your family and never going home. And as the years went on, and as he watched cast members die, and as he continued to play a role on television that was increasingly disconnected from who he really was, something began to shift. The show started to feel hollow. The drama felt forced. The rivalry felt pointless when real people were dying in real ways. By season 13, Dave Carraro had been doing this for more than a decade. 13 seasons. That is longer than most television shows last. He had won 5 championships. He had made money. He had become famous. He had also watched the show's formula get more and more repetitive. The drama was being manufactured the same way every season. The rivalries were becoming predictable. The outcome of most episodes could be guessed by the editing in the opening minutes. And the gap between who he was pretending to be and who he actually was had grown so wide that the dissonance was becoming unbearable. Dave Carraro was trapped in a television persona that had nothing to do with his real life. He was playing a character that audiences believed was real, while his actual self remained completely hidden. And then something unexpected happened. In 2024, after 13 seasons, National Geographic made an announcement. They were canceling Wicked Tuna. No explanation. No warning. Just done. The show that had defined the channel for over a decade was ending. And that is when the real mystery began. When National Geographic canceled Wicked Tuna in 2024, the announcement caught everyone off guard. Fans were shocked. Cast members were shocked. And suddenly, Dave Carraro vanished from public life almost overnight. For 13 years, people had grown accustomed to seeing him on their screens. Every season, he would return. Every championship, he would compete. Every week, millions of viewers would tune in to watch him fish and fight and dominate. And then all of that stopped. The show ended. And Dave disappeared. That is when the real speculation began. That is when the mystery people have been talking about ever since started to form. Where did Dave Carraro go? That became the question that consumed social media. Reddit threads exploded with theories. YouTube comments were full of speculation. People on fishing forums were posting about what might have happened to him. Some theories were innocent. Maybe he just wanted to get away from the spotlight and go back to being a normal fisherman. Maybe he was tired of television and wanted his privacy back. But other theories were much darker. Some people claimed that he had been forced off the show because of some scandal. Maybe he had done something illegal. Maybe there was a lawsuit. Maybe he had gotten into a conflict with the network that we would never know about. Other people whispered about health problems. Cancer. Heart disease. Mental health crises. Some even suggested that something terrible had happened to him, that he had suffered some kind of accident or tragedy that was being kept quiet. The speculation kept growing. Fans created elaborate theories about what really happened. Some people dug through his social media looking for clues. Others analyzed old episodes trying to find hints about why he had left. There were posts claiming that his marriage was falling apart. Posts claiming that he had gotten into legal trouble. Posts claiming that he had simply had a complete mental breakdown and was being cared for in private. The internet does this thing where absence becomes a mystery, and mystery becomes a story, and the story becomes more dramatic with each retelling. Dave Carraro's absence from television became this massive unsolved mystery that people could not stop thinking about. It was the perfect celebrity mystery. A man who had been famous for years. Millions of people who thought they knew him. And then he was gone. Completely gone. No explanation. No goodbye. No final word. Just silence. But here is the thing that nobody expected. Here is the truth that makes this story so much more interesting than any scandal could possibly be. Dave Carraro did not have a dramatic downfall. He was not forced off the show. He did not face any legal charges. He did not have a health crisis or a mental breakdown or a catastrophic accident. He did not disappear at all. What actually happened was far more mundane and far more revealing about how television and celebrity work. Dave Carraro simply went back to his life. He went back to being a fisherman. He went back to being a pilot. He went back to being a private person who had a family and a home and responsibilities that had nothing to do with being on camera. The show was cancelled. His television job ended. And he stopped being a television personality. That is literally it. Think about what that means for a second. For 13 years, millions of people watched Dave Carraro on their television screens. They thought they knew him. They had opinions about him. They rooted for him or against him. They discussed him with their families and friends. They formed emotional connections to him based on what they saw on television. And then when the show ended, he simply went back to the life he had always had underneath the television persona. He was never really gone. He never really disappeared. He simply stopped performing. He stopped being available to be watched. And because he stopped being available to watch, people assumed something dramatic must have happened. They assumed that a person could not simply choose to step away from fame and return to privacy. They assumed that celebrity must require some kind of catastrophic ending. But Dave Carraro's life did not end. His career as a fisherman did not end. His marriage to Jess Boardway did not end. His work as an aviation captain did not end. None of that changed. What changed is that he was no longer on television. He was no longer performing a version of himself for an audience. He was no longer part of a drama that National Geographic was orchestrating for ratings. He simply became a private person again. And the mystery that everyone was trying to solve was not actually a mystery at all. It was just the normal human experience of someone choosing privacy over fame. It was someone deciding that 13 seasons of playing a television character was enough, and that he wanted to return to the actual life he had built away from cameras. This is what makes the Dave Carraro story so revealing about how we consume celebrity. For 13 years, we watched this man on television. We learned facts about his fishing. We saw his competitive moments. We heard his voice and watched his expressions. We felt like we knew him. We felt invested in his story. But the entire time, the real Dave Carraro was someone completely different. He was living a private life that we never saw. He was maintaining friendships that we did not know about. He was married to a woman most of us had never even heard of. He was working as a pilot in addition to being a fisherman. He was thinking thoughts that were never broadcast. He was having experiences that were never filmed. And the thing we thought we knew, the television version of Dave, was just a character. A version that he played because that was the job he had agreed to do. When the show ended, that character ended. But somehow, we expected Dave Carraro to keep existing as that character forever. We expected him to keep being available. We expected him to keep being the television personality we had watched. When he did not, when he simply went back to being a regular person, we created an elaborate mystery to explain why. We could not accept that someone would simply choose to stop being famous. We could not accept that television access to a person could simply end and that person would be fine. We wanted there to be a scandal or a tragedy or something dramatic enough to explain why our connection to him was severed. But the real answer is far simpler and far sadder. Television creates the illusion of knowing someone while actually revealing almost nothing. And when that illusion ends, the person underneath just keeps living their life, completely unchanged. This is the real story of Dave Carraro. Not a mystery with a dark ending, but a revelation about how little we actually know about anyone we watch on television, and how willing we are to create fantasies about people's lives when they simply choose to be private. So what is Dave Carraro actually doing right now? What happened after the cameras stopped rolling? This is where the real story gets even more interesting, because it turns out that Dave Carraro's life never actually changed that much. He is still fishing. He is still captaining his boat, the Wicked Tuna. He is still using the same skills and the same discipline that made him famous on television. The only difference is that cameras are not there documenting it anymore. The only difference is that he is doing it for himself and for his crew and for the genuine love of fishing, not for ratings or for championships that were broadcast to millions of people. He went back to being a commercial fisherman the way he was before National Geographic arrived in Gloucester, and it turned out that that life was exactly what he wanted all along. Dave is also still working as an aviation captain. That part of his life, the one that so few people knew about while he was on television, continues exactly as it always has. He still maintains the discipline and the precision that pilot training requires. He still checks conditions obsessively before flying. He still approaches risk the way someone trained in aviation safety has to approach it. That job gave him half of who he is, and it never stopped. It just happened off camera, the way most important things do. For the people who actually know Dave Carraro, the people who work with him and live near him in Gloucester, nothing really changed when the show ended. He was the same guy before Wicked Tuna started, and he is the same guy now that it has ended. The television version was just a temporary role he played. His marriage to Jess Boardway also continues. They kept their relationship almost completely private during his time on television, which now seems like a very wise decision. While other reality television stars were sharing their relationships with audiences and dealing with the scrutiny that comes with having millions of people have opinions about your marriage, Dave and Jess kept their life together completely separate from his television career. That boundary protected their relationship in ways that most celebrity couples never get to experience. When the show ended, there was no adjustment needed. There was no public breakup to explain. There was no fallout from fame damaging their connection. They simply continued living the life they had built together, which is exactly what they wanted. But here is where the story becomes deeply important for what it tells us about television and celebrity and the way we relate to people we watch on screens. For 13 years, millions of people had strong opinions about Dave Carraro. They thought they knew him. Some people hated him. They thought he was arrogant and ruthless and willing to step on anyone to win. Some people loved him. They respected his competitive drive and his dominance and his refusal to apologize for being the best. Some people were ambivalent. They appreciated his skills but were put off by his television persona. And all of those millions of people formed their opinions based on a character that National Geographic was carefully constructing for entertainment purposes. They thought they knew the real Dave Carraro. But they did not. They knew a version of him. They knew an edited, dramatized, carefully orchestrated version of him that was designed to make good television. The real Dave Carraro was not nearly as arrogant as his television persona suggested. He was not nearly as ruthless. He maintained genuine friendships with the people he competed against. He kept his personal life almost completely private. He was thoughtful and disciplined and very intentional about maintaining boundaries between his work and his private existence. He was a professional who understood that television required a certain performance, and he delivered that performance. But he was also clear about the fact that performance was not who he actually was. And when the show ended, he simply returned to being the person he had always been underneath the television version. This is what makes the Dave Carraro story so relevant right now. We are living in an era where television and social media have created a situation where people feel like they know public figures in ways that previous generations never did. We watch people's daily lives. We see behind-the-scenes content. We feel invested in their personal dramas. We form emotional connections to them. And we often forget that what we are seeing is still a performance. It is still a construction. It is still someone choosing what to share and what to hide. Even when it feels like we are seeing the real person, we are almost always seeing a curated version. We are seeing someone's professional persona. We are seeing what they have chosen to reveal. Dave Carraro simply took that curation to an extreme by keeping his real life almost completely separate from his television life. Most celebrities try to merge those worlds. They try to be authentic and real and relatable by sharing details of their personal lives. They give interviews about their marriages and their struggles and their vulnerabilities. They appear on social media looking casual and unfiltered. They try to make audiences feel like they know the real person behind the celebrity. But Dave did the opposite. He kept the television version completely separate from the real version. And when the show ended, he did not try to leverage his fame into a social media career or book deal or speaking engagements. He simply went back to his life. He chose privacy. He chose obscurity. He chose to not be a celebrity. And that choice is so rare and so unusual in our current culture that it automatically became a mystery. We could not accept that someone would simply walk away from fame. We could not accept that a television personality would prefer to be unknown. So we created stories to explain it. We invented reasons why he had to disappear. We made up scandals and tragedies and dramatic endings. But the real story was always simpler than that. Dave Carraro just wanted his life back. And he took it. And that is exactly what happened to him. Not a mystery. Not a tragedy. Just a man who understood that television was a job, and when the job ended, he moved on. That is the lesson of Dave Carraro's story. Sometimes the most important thing about a person is not what they choose to share with the world. Sometimes it is what they choose to keep private. And sometimes the greatest revelation is simply that most of what we think we know about people on television is exactly what we should never have believed in the first place. So what do you think? What do you think Dave Carraro's story really is? Is it a mystery, or is it just a man who decided he did not want to be famous anymore? Comment below and let me know. Because honestly, the most interesting part of this story is not what happened to Dave Carraro. It is what his disappearance reveals about us. About how willing we are to fill in blanks with drama. About how we struggle to accept that someone could simply choose to be private. About how television creates an illusion of knowing someone that we mistake for actual knowledge. Dave Carraro is out there living his life. He is fishing. He is flying. He is being a husband and a professional and a regular person. And that is the real story. That is the real ending. If you found this story interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more celebrity mysteries and where are they now stories. And watch the next video in the series to discover what really happened to another forgotten television star. Thank you so much for watching.